Today is Friday, January 29th, 2021, which means it's Derelict Friday. Hello, fiendlings, how the hell are you? I've been shot, jabbed, stabbed by a paramedic with vaccine. The process was fast, relatively painless, and I never had to leave the car. Apart from having to wait 20 minutes to make sure I didn't have any issues, it was about as well run as it could be. So shout out to Lone Star Health for showing the rest of the state how it's done. To my knowledge, I'm not being satellite tracked because of the vaccine. Instead, I'm being satellite tracked by my phone, my computer, my watch, my deodorant. You get the picture, as per usual. Yes, tongue firmly in cheek. Sort of. Maybe. Let's drop that subject. It appears I'll have some news for you on the publishing front in the next few weeks. It will be a good thing and put some money in my bank account, but most importantly, it will give me some latitude regarding books I want to write in the Soul and Beyond universe. Speaking of that Soul and Beyond thing, I know some of you are patiently waiting to hear that Derelict Shipyards is finished. Well, it ain't, damn it. But it's so close now, so damn close. In fact, I can already taste the reader's tears. Yum, yum. I'm going to miss this series when it's finished. As big of a pain in the ass as it has been, as much as it has distracted me from other works, and as much heartache as its sales have given me, I will miss it. Good thing there's more coming after Shipyards. That's all I'm saying for now. With that, I think it's time we get back to our story. If I remember correctly, there were Marines, exosolar creatures, and some damn lieutenant wasn't where he was supposed to be. Let's find out what the void he's been up to. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 9 of Derelict Trident. Chapter 13. After Kelly Moore's squad disappeared from the comms channel and the SV-52's sensors, Taulbee had reoriented the craft and pushed it to a slow descent. Once below Red's belly, he halted the negative vector and waited. And waited.
Done to Taulbee.
Taulbee raised an eyebrow before responding. Aye, sir. Go?
Black has picked up radiation venting from the engine array.
It took a second for his brain to process that. Red was dead. He knew it. The ship was powered off, giving off no heat in the near absolute zero, and there had been no radiation leaking from the engines. Their reactors had either been consumed like Mira's, or her aft hull, baffles, and radiation shielding were intact. Based on what he'd seen at the cargo bay door and the giant rip in the bow, he didn't think either of those were true. What does Black think? Taulbee asked, but he thought he already knew.
That there are exosolar life forms in engineering, and they're either waking up or about to do something.
Helpful, Taulbee muttered. Investigate?
No, we have a probe headed to that location, but I wanted you to be prepared for something to happen back there.
Understood, sir. Taulbee tapped his gloved fingers on the console. At least Black had confirmed his suspicions. Well, not confirmed as such, but she had reached the same conclusion. If she had just launched the probe, it should be reaching the aft section in less than 30 seconds. With the feeds from Callimore's squads no longer receiving data, he reduced them in size, searched the available channels, and found the probes. Grinning, he brought it forward. The probe had already reached Red's port side hull and was moving at 2 meters per second, its camera pointed directly at the ship. At a distance of only 4 meters from the hull, the feed was too narrow to see the entire craft. He flicked his eyes to his other feeds while waiting for the probe to reach the aft. Wendt, Copenhaver, and Murdoch were still in their same positions. He had expected Murdoch's feed to be fidgety since the young Marine never seemed able to stand still, but this time he was as rock solid as Wendt. Their feeds showed him the giant rip in the bow and Red's lifeless profile. When Black had told them about Red, his first thought had been to suggest they tow the derelict back to Trident Station. If there were more KBOs in the vicinity, they might need the ship. Maybe Noble could fix her up, apply some emergency repairs, and get her spaceworthy again. But after seeing the damage, not to mention the radiation readings, that was a non-starter. Now he just wanted his people out of there as quickly as possible, and to blow the void damn thing up. But would it actually destroy the creatures? The last thing they needed was another flotilla of exosolar life forms following them back to Trident. The probe approached the aft section in the engineering bay's exterior. The radiation detector on the probe slowly rose in intensity. In a few seconds, the radiation had reached lethal levels. A line of static appeared on the feed but quickly dissipated. The radiation monitor readings continued to rise until they were well past the point of suit safety. Whatever was in there was heating up the ship in a void of a hurry. The utmost steel plate covering the engineering bay was no longer a lifeless, pockmarked gray. Instead, the slab of hardened metal had begun to change to a dull red. Taulbee had never seen utmost steel do that before. He watched in fascination as the surrounding plates glowed too, but the engineering plate? It was no longer a dim red. It had turned a bloody crimson. "Sir," Taulbee said over the comms.
I see it.
Dunn said.
We need to get our people out, now.
Get them out. Right. The emergency airlock they'd gone through was shut and might be their only egress. But if they'd gone through the cargo bay to get to the personnel decks, they'd be cut off from using that route. The radiation would make it impossible for them to return to the upper deck. So where would they exit the ship? Could they exit the ship? "Personnel decks," he muttered. "Personnel decks are near." He blinked before his mouth upturned in a hard grin. "Went?"
Aye, sir.
The Marine's deep voice immediately responded. "They've got one way out. It's that rip in the bow. Cover it."
Aye, sir.
Went said, sounding a little confused. "Trust me, Marine, that's their only way out." When Went spoke again, his voice was calm and sure.
Understood, sir.
He half listened as Went gave his fire team their orders. The 3 Marines would move into position to provide cover fire. That was it. It was all Taulbee could do for the moment. With deft, instinctual movements on the controls, he brought the SV-52 around and glided the craft out from beneath the hull and toward the bow. The probe continued taking pictures and readings, although the feed had become a jumbled mess of static overlaying the images. The radiation monitor had spiked to its highest level before an alert announced it had died.
"Lieutenant,"
Black said. "Yes, Black, a little busy right now." The probe's feed disappeared from his visor. A new one appeared in its place, showing Red's port side aft hull. The engineering bay plates were all glowing crimson now. Worse, he thought he saw them vibrating.
"Lieutenant,"
Black said.
"I believe the ship's hull is about to come undone."
"Fucking void," Taulbee said, but all the breath had gone out of his voice. As if on cue, the plate that had first glowed began to crumble. Shards of utmost steel rose off the hull and into space, twinkling like ice crystals. A rip appeared in the plate, a large appendage splitting through the metal and peeling it upward like a tin can. "Taulbee to Dunn,"
Get over there now.
Dunn said.
Provide cover until we can get our people out.
"Aye, sir." He had already reoriented the SV-52 to rise near the bow. The craft descended once more below Red's belly, and he opened up the throttle. The engine shook the craft for a second, and the ship's belly seemed to move like lightning above his head. At nearly 10 meters per second, he shot out from beneath Red. Black's feed continued playing on his HUD, and he saw himself through it. The steel plates covering the engineering bay were all breaking apart. Appendages pushed up on the plates as though human hands were opening a hatch. A plate completely gave way, the metal shattering outward in a storm of debris. Radiation warnings hit his HUD. He couldn't stay near the ship for more than a few seconds before the radiation would begin eating its way through the 52's rad shielding. Taulbee hit the 4 thrusters, and the 52 flew backward away from the ship. "Black, what the hell is going on?" A piece of hull plate flew by the canopy, one edge clipping the side of the SV-52 and sending him into a spin. Cursing, he hit the controls in sequence to get stable. When he finally refocused his attention on the ship, his mouth and eyes opened wide. Red's aft was cracking apart. The remaining hull plates, glowing from the intense heat of the radiation, exploded outward in a shower of debris. A bright pulsing light activated the retinal filters, protecting his eyes from a near-lethal photon storm. The brief after-image faded, showing him something massive tearing itself free from the aft.
Get out of there!
Dunn shouted over the comms. Taulbee was frozen. Dunn's voice continued yelling commands. He heard the captain saying the Marines were clear. He heard the sound of Black telling him to move the craft away, return to S&R Black at once. He heard all of that, but his mind refused to process any of it. The shape blew away the rest of Red's remaining hull plates into a shatterstorm of metal. Appendages more than a meter thick lashed out at empty space. The starfish thing, its surface eating the photons from the SV-52's lights like a black hole, rose from its metal cocoon. He watched in fascination as it spread its arms, each ending in a silver talon. Its shell shimmering like heat haze, the creature pivoted until its giant maw faced the SV-52. Something was coming out of the horrid, circular mouth. Finally, Taulbee's brain came to life with a nearly audible click. He hit the throttle hard and pushed the SV-52 backward with a steady stream of fuel. The craft glided, his canopy still facing the creature that was now following his every move.
Taulbee, respond. That's an order.
Dunn's words were barely audible over the ocean of static. He opened his mouth to tell the captain he had everything under control when the creature seemed to buck in space before a thick silver thread of acid squirted past the canopy. Taulbee hit the starboard thrusters and engaged the engine as soon as he had some room. One of the arms reached out for the craft just as he brought the engines to full. 3 Gs of acceleration pushed him into the couch. The 52, still sliding to port, took off on a burst of speed. "Bringing a friend," he yelled over the comms.
Lieutenant,
Black said.
please follow my instructions.
His block filled with a series of burns and thruster bursts. Without asking, he followed her burn plan. The 52 spun and jolted as the burns flipped the craft until it was oriented away from S&R Black and heading deeper into the Kuiper Belt. The starfish had increased its speed in an impossible burst of propulsion, its arms pumping furiously as though it were swimming through water instead of empty space. Taulbee continued following Black's flight plan, his fingers dancing over the controls. Another rope of silvery acid shot past the canopy, and a new alert appeared on his HUD. Pressure leak. Some of the ship must have gotten through the armor. On the next control sequence, he vented the SV-52's remaining atmosphere, using the force of the decompression to send the craft into a slide. Black's instruction set changed in real time, adjusting for his imprecision and timing in hitting the controls.
Prepare for a jolt,
Black said in a voice he barely recognized. A warhead detonated behind him, his HUD lighting up in reds and yellows. He flicked his eyes to the rear feed just in time to see the starfish creature wobble through space like an insect with a damaged wing. Something streaked through the camera feed and struck the creature again, 2 of its arms disappearing at once. The creature seemed to fade, its nearly impossible darkness changing to gray. As it lightened, color began to appear, pinks and magentas that quickly coalesced into a pulsing rage of fiery reds. Another round streaked past his aft, the projectile missing the jittery creature. Taulbee spun the SV-52 with an attitude burst and fired one of his last remaining tritium rounds. The starfish practically leaned into the shot, which struck it a meter to the left of its alien mouth. The creature didn't snap or crack as the others at Mira had. Instead, it exploded, coloring the space around it with a dull red glow that lasted less than an instant. Taulbee's radiation alarm spiked into the red before flattening back to yellow. The SV-52's velocity continued carrying it further and further away from Black. Taulbee knew he needed to reverse course, get his ass back to the ship, but he could only stare where the creature had been. The space around the explosion shimmered with a shade of gray, just bright enough to be seen against the deep black.
Taulbee,
Dunn's voice came over the comms.
what's your status?
When he spoke, his words were slow and labored. "Sir, target destroyed. Over."
Copy, Taulbee. Your corporal would like a lift.
Corporal? Void, how had he forgotten his Marines? "Aye, sir, on my way. Out." He'd barely finished speaking the last word when Black opened the channel.
Lieutenant, I have plotted a course that will keep you as far away from the affected space as possible.
Taulbee engaged the engines in several small burns to halt its velocity. His heart was still beating too damn fast. He cleared his head. Marines, he thought. Have to get to your Marines. The burns and attitude adjustments necessary to follow the new course took little of his focus. Black, what just happened?
I don't know.
Black said.
Would you like me to guess?
He raised an eyebrow, and a surprised grin lit his face. Yes, Black, that would be nice for a change.
The exosolar life form was nearing some sort of metamorphosis, perhaps due to the radiation it presumably consumed, or as simply another part of its life cycle.
He shook his head. We didn't see that at Mira. No, the AI agreed.
However, the creatures had been hibernating for nearly half a century until our arrival. We spent less than 8 hours in their immediate vicinity. Our observational data is somewhat limited.
Taulbee caught the sarcasm in the last of her words, but let it go. If this is part of their life cycle, we didn't witness it because there hadn't been enough time for the creatures to transform. Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, or it could have been the result of the radiation it consumed.
Taulbee turned that over in his head while he brought the 52 closer to S&R Black. He made out the shadowy figures of Wint and his fire team still standing guard near the bow. Beyond them lay Red. The ship was missing a good portion of its aft section and had begun to spin away from Black. Shit, Taulbee said and opened a channel. Taulbee to Calimora.
Aye, sir.
Here you need a ride. As he crossed Black's bow and headed to match the Marine's location, he saw the lights from the 3 suits. Calimora's squad had locked arms together and floated like a strange trefoil in space.
Aye, sir. Dickerson has a damaged suit. He's lost a bit of atmosphere, but we have it stabilized for now. Over.
Copy. How long do we have?
Long enough,
she said. He took in a deep breath and tried to slow his heart. It had begun racing at the thought of Dickerson dying here because he was too busy staring at a fucking astronomical anomaly. Do you have thrusters?
Enough for a short burst, sir,
Calimora said.
Can you get within 10 meters?
Taulbee felt like laughing, but didn't. I can do better than that, Corporal. And he did. Without much difficulty, he brought the 52 within 2 meters of the formation. Yellow radiation alerts sprang to life on his HUD. He suddenly wondered if Calimora's squad had been bathed in this shit, or if it was just residual background radiation from the creature and Red's contaminated remains. With the 3 Marines aboard, he headed back to S&R Black. The ship had changed its attitude to point its port side at the drifting derelict hulk. Black, you moving the ship?
Yes, Lieutenant.
Done to Taulbee.
Aye, sir? The captain's voice sounded more than a little grim.
Double time it.
Copy. He opened the squad channel. Corporal, we're going to hit the cargo bay in a hurry and get your people inside quick. He listened as Calimora told Wint's fire team to get their asses through the airlock. Hitching a ride in an SV-52 when it was maneuvering and jetting could make you sick your suit. He'd seen it before. Hell, he'd damn near done it during training. But in a combat situation, like at the end of the satellite war, your stomach didn't have time to complain. He was willing to bet Calimora, Carbonaro, and Dickerson had their weapons ready for anything. If he was them, he certainly would. The cargo bay was open, its illuminated interior appearing as a bright white window. Hold on, he said over the squad channel. He'd normally come in at 1 meter per second, but he managed 3 meters per second, brought the craft to a jerking halt before it could slam into the opposite bulkhead. Clear, he yelled over the comms. The cargo bay door immediately slid shut.
All hands?
Oak's voice said over the comms.
Prepare for brief acceleration burn.
In other words, hold on to your asses. 3 seconds later, the ship trembled and he felt the pressure from additional G-forces pinning him backward in the cockpit. It lasted less than 5 seconds, but it had been anything but a gentle burn. Corporal?
Aye, sir,
Calimora said. A check of the feeds showed her and Carb peeling Dickerson off the side of the 52. Casualties?
No, sir. All accounted for. 1 damaged suit.
Aye, he said. Taulbee breathed a sigh of relief. He sent a block command and the cockpit opened. He stepped out and realized they were still in ZG. The grav plates were off. He brought up the cargo bay readings on his HUD. The grav plate keeping the exosolar lifeform trapped was still operating at full power. Good. One less thing to worry about. His suit reported 1 atmosphere of pressure. He pulled off his helmet and quickly tucked it under his arm. Kelly Mora and her fire team stood at attention in their suits, their helmets still on. At ease, Taulbee said. Get out of your suits, hit the medbay, and prepare for a debrief.
Aye, sir,
the 3 Marines said. Dismissed, he said. The trio of Marines headed out of the cargo bay in an eerie silence. He'd have to view their cam feeds. Shit, he'd have to view his own. He still didn't believe what he'd seen. Maybe the Marines' cam feed would show him something else. Something to explain it.
All hands.
Black said.
Weapons free.
Frowning, Taulbee brought up the ship's cannon feeds just in time to watch 3 missiles launch. They glided out of their launchers at a fast clip, but once the engines kicked in, they streaked through the darkness of space toward the broken shell that had been S&R Red. More than 2 kilometers away, Red was nearly indistinguishable from the background of stars. When he switched to the missile cam feed, all that changed. From the missile's perspective, Red's broken aft quickly came into view. The guided projectiles activated their attitude thrusters at the last second, flying through the shattered aft fuselage and missing deck plates. A bright flash, and nothing but a signal lost, target destroyed alert remained. S&R Red had ceased to exist.